Last week we had a cool conversation. Several people asked about intuition. How do I trust my intuition? How do I know when it's my ego or if it's my social conditioning, or when it's my trauma that is guiding my sort of meditation or intuitive sessions? How do I know when it's my intuition? And we had a long sort of meandering discussion about that. And when I walked away from it, I thought it was an interesting conversation, but I also didn't really feel like the dive was deep enough. And the reality was we weren't going to do the deep dive in just, an hour or an hour and a half of meandering conversation. And I just thought about the book, I wrote this book, Awakening Soul Force, A Practical Guide to Awakening the Truth Within. And I thought about how the chapters that I wrote about the chakra system really addressed a lot of the questions I felt people were having. People had reached out to me in messages asking more specific questions, or if I was going to circle back to some of the stuff we had talked about. And I thought about it, and I thought the only way to really get into this is to start with the chakra system and to talk about the chakras and each individual one, what they're related to, how they facilitate the exchange of energy between ourselves and the world around us. So really, the chakras are the gateway and the access point from which we relate to the world. So there's a give and take of energy all the time. We have 7 energy centers from the base of the spine up to the crown of the head, and each one of them corresponds with a different aspect of our self, energetically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally in terms of thought process, mental activity, and physically, the actual physical material body. So I thought the best approach to maybe doing the deep dive is to just go into each chakra and do the overview. And instead of me meandering to and fro and all over the place trying to answer questions in my squirrely brain, I have a 300-page book, and I put all these thoughts down in a much more, maybe not always less meandering way, but in a more clear and a much more intentional, and very focused way. So I decided that we would discuss the chakras, and I would just read right out of my book. And then just take a moment to pause at different sections and answer questions if y'all have questions. And then at the end, I wanted to go into another dimension of what was written in the book, which was a deconditioning thought experiment. So because we were talking about social conditioning and trauma and past experiences, and how do we know if those are influencing what's coming through in our intuitive guidance sessions? Well, doing this deconditioning thought experiment for me has been kind of the crux of my spiritual seeking journey. It's been the sort of the razor, the scalpel, that I use to dissect and analyze my ideas and experiences and discover and figure out if they serve me anymore, if they serve my highest growth, if they serve my highest good. So that's what we're going to talk about. Tab says, I love the chapter on Chakra Khan. Yes, very entertaining. It's a very entertaining chapter. So I am recording this for those who might be joining and are going to pop off. I'll upload this to the Soul Force group here. I'm also going to put it up online on my YouTube page. So if you're here, thanks for joining. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the first chakra in the system, and it's called the Root Chakra. Yeah, Deanna says Jeff's book club. Yeah. Tab has suggested doing something like this, and I think it might be a good idea to explore. I don't know about doing the whole book, but maybe. But definitely diving into this section, I think is going to be most relevant to those who have been in the group and really engaged for a long time. So here we go. Let's dive into talking about the root chakra. So we're starting with the root because this is the fundamental, this is the first chakra in the system, located at the base of the spine. And it's essentially the base and the foundation, and you'll see that that's generally what it governs. And, oh, good. Hi, Victoria. It's nice to see you again here, too. Very good to see you. We're going to start from the bottom up. So we're going to build from the root chakra all the way up through the crown over the next 7 days, okay? So if you have questions, go ahead and throw them out there over the course of this. I'll stop and take pause. It's not a long chapter, but it's much more to the point than if I was to just talk about the chakras. So we'll dive into it, okay? Here we go. The root chakra. Survival of the fittest. Do or die. kill or be killed, get a piece of the pie. When it comes to our cultural programming, the belief that there is not enough, that life is a competition, is fundamental in many of our cultural stories. If we look at this deeply, we see an unconscious belief about our world that immediately pulls us out of energetic balance at our most fundamental level. When we look out into our world, we see competition everywhere. In school, in politics, in sports, in business, and even in the arts. People are constantly jockeying for advancement, awards, accolades, social status, fame, and various positions and opportunities. We want to make more money, own more gadgets, earn more praise, and have more, quote, friends than everybody else. Have you ever stopped and looked at how many human activities are framed as competitions? When we're born into a culture that suggests that life is a fight for survival from birth, is it really any wonder why we're so stressed out all the time? When it comes to our root chakra, we're dealing with the most primal instinct in us to survive. Therefore, it is important to keep this energy center balanced and harmonized so we don't end up experiencing life as a struggle to survive when we are meant to experience the joy of thriving. The color of this chakra is red. Its location, the root chakra, is located at the base of the spine, the very tip of the tailbone. So this reference here, you'll probably recognize that when we do our meditations together, the very first thing we do is connect to the base of the spine, draw the energy up through the crown, bring it back down through the spine, and then send it down to the earth to create that connection with the grounding cord. That fundamental energetic practice that we do in our meditations up until that point is all about grounding. It's about anchoring the root chakra to the here and now. So maybe that makes a little bit more sense as to why that exercise, that meditation that I often, I do that with every meditation, begins there. All right? So let's continue. Uh-oh. Looks like we had a failure here. Let me know if you're still here. It looks like the computer had a meltdown. So let me know if you're still watching. Red is my color of choice. Very good. Okay, so back on track here. What it is, our root chakra is our deepest connection to the physical body, our environment, and the earth. It is connected to the qualities of grounding, structure, ancestry, community, stability, finances, security, and most fundamentally, survival. Body parts. Physically, this chakra is connected to our skeletal structure, our teeth, kidneys, blood, and large intestines. So this is where we're getting into the different dimensions of how the balance and the energy in this center, how it's flowing, has an impact on all of these areas. And it works both ways. So there's the energetic side of it, as far as if there's an energy block here, we might see the symptoms of this block pop up in these areas physically. And on the other side of it, if we have an injury or trauma to these parts of our body in some way, then we also know that we can follow that line back to the root chakra and understand that physical ailment means there's going to be a disruption there. So it's kind of like using this as like a map that moves from the most gross material expression of energy, which is matter in our physical body, and then the highest, which is the ether, okay? And that whole spectrum. Signs of balance. When the root chakra is balanced, there is a self-assuredness and a confidence that our basic needs will be met. We feel connected to our physical body and secure in our safety. We have a healthy metabolism as well as physical strength, stamina, and vitality. We also feel safe in our work life and secure in a financial sense. At the most basic level, we feel like we have the solid foundation we need to build our life upon and the necessary resources to grow mentally, emotional, and spiritually. We also feel a strong sense of belonging in our families and our respective communities. So if I was going to break this down into a simple word, it's our foundation. It's our grounding, it's our connection to the physical body and the earth. It's about survival and all the ways at a most fundamental and foundational level that we sort of draw on that, like all the different things that ground us. That's what this chakra is governing. Now, here's some of the stuff that we want to get into to address some of those questions that folks had about, well, how do I know and how do I fix it, right? So causes for imbalance. We're looking at imbalances in this energy center. Pain and trauma related to experiences of violence, abuse, threatened survival, poverty, homelessness, food scarcity, financial insecurity, abandonment, and betrayal can lead to imbalances in the root chakra. So that's one dimension of it. Disruptions in the home life, like a breakup, a divorce, marriage, a new baby, or family loss, can destabilize this energy center as well. Again, we're talking about the foundations. So anything that shakes or disturbs that foundation, there's work to be done in the root chakra. Constant travel, moving a lot, especially to unfamiliar places, and living paycheck to paycheck are other experiences that compromise the integrity of the root chakra. So already, as we're reading this, some causes for imbalance. I'd be curious, and you can tell me in the chat if you want, or you can just reflect on it yourself. How many of those things describe an experience in your life, and how much of that has been addressed? Are you at peace with those things? This is where we start to look at our experiences. We start to look at the way in which we've engaged with the world, and we can start to hone in on, okay, yeah, I've experienced a divorce. I do travel a lot for work, and maybe not so much anymore, but in the past, I was working a lot. And so all that stuff, you want to take a look at that. So how do we know when things are out of balance? That's what we're going to talk about next. When the root chakra is out of balance, we may feel disconnected from our body and show signs of clumsiness or issues with coordination. Poor circulation and arthritis in the lower extremities, spine or skeletal issues, joint pain, issues with the legs, knees, and feet may also manifest themselves. The legs, knees, and feet really make sense because, one, they're the foundation of our physical body, right? That's what keeps us standing up. It's our physical foundation. Issues with undereating and overeating could also indicate an imbalance in the root chakra as well, since they relate to our metabolism. Our metabolism is the give and take of energy that we process through food. It's how we ingest energy and how we process and expel it. So again, coming back to the basics of this energy exchange, metabolism is connected to the root chakra. Emotional and mental signs of overactivity or excessive energy in the root chakra may manifest as fear and insecurity related to the physical body and material matters. We may isolate ourselves, feel disconnected from others, and act aggressively, manipulatively, or even violently to get what we want to feel secure. Believing that there is not enough, that life is a competition, and that this world is dog eat dog can give rise to root chakra imbalances that lead us to act harshly and selfishly. We may become addicted to physical pleasures, which give rise to opulence, greed, and an overindulgence in food. Educational and mental signs of underactivity or insufficient energy in the root chakra include feeling worried, anxious, fearful, and uncertain about one's place in the world. We may suffer from low self-esteem, low confidence, depression, and possibly even suicidal thoughts. If our root chakra is out of balance, we may be more likely to receive abuse or to abuse others. We may also find it difficult to get a handle on our financial matters and therefore struggle with money or experience poverty. There is also an element of not feeling welcome or not fitting in our family, community, and society at large. So, just a quick summary, when this out of balance section, we're talking about those signs, those symptoms, those things that if we're feeling them, then it can direct our attention to the root chakra. So we know we want to do some work in there. We want to check in with that energy center in our meditation. We want to do some deep looking at what's coming up. Why are these issues around? Is it something that you experienced 20 years ago? Well, why is it still present? How are those scars still present? And we're going to talk about deconditioning that in a little bit, but again, these are just things that we can look at and we can observe them in ourselves and say, oh, okay, there's something there. And this chakra center just gives us a chance to hone in on that and then rebalance it. So let's talk about rebalancing it. This is the last section here. Mantras and generating positive energy. So these are ways that we can start to bring, consciously using our mind and our actions to sort of charge up this energy center if it's out of balance. So good mantras, if root chakra work is necessary for you. Mantras: I am strong, I am safe, I am secure, there is enough. Those are some mantras you can say over and over and over again to reprogram our thoughts about ourselves that can help bring in, in a conscious way, open us up to bringing energy into that center that's going to bring us into balance. So think about that. Write them down if you have an opportunity, or buy the book, Awakening Soul Force, on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles. Mantras: I am strong, I am safe, I am secure, there is enough. Now here's the fun part. This is where we take our power back. We're not a pawn being blown around at the wind, at the whims of God and the universe and powerful outside forces. This is where we find our empowerment. It's by taking action, by acting proactively to bring in and charge up and bring balance into the center. That's our responsibility. It's nobody else's. So generating positive energy in this energy center. Taking proactive physical action can generate positive energy flow in this center. Making connections to family members, ensuring that your home space feels safe and comfortable. Managing and tidying up your finances, connecting to Mother Earth, and spending time in nature are all physical activities that bring the energy of safety, security, and stability into your life. This is where you're putting the energy out there. You're doing the work to say, this is what I want. This is what I claim. This is what I deserve. This is kind of getting into like the manifesting stuff, but it's like, I'm claiming this for myself. It's taking your power to do that and create that for yourself. It's really powerful. Even if the direct experience of safety, security, and stability are not fully within reach yet, taking actionable steps towards those goals can generate positive energy and momentum in that direction. When you take tangible actions and combine those efforts with consciously working to clear out any negative beliefs, trauma, or energy blocks, you reclaim your right to feel safe, secure, and grounded in this world through working with the root chakra. All right, so that is the root chakra in a nutshell. So much better. I know we're 19 minutes in, but that is so much better than me meandering all over the place. So let's look at some of the comments, and if you have any questions, would love to take them at this point before we move into the deconditioning aspect of things. So let's see what y'all have been saying. So connected to the earth. Yes. Abandonment, divorce, and many others. I have healed it. You're giving exact example of things that have happened to me. It explains my past patterns. Thank you. Very interesting. Yeah. Finding balance has changed my life. That's awesome. Nature works for me. Yeah, nature works for me too. Nature is a really important one. And the other thing that I've become very aware of, I spent a lot of time, I wrote about in the book. I actually share, in the book I actually share a little reflection about myself, so that it's not just an abstract thing, right? I talk about how understanding these has impacted my own journey to bringing myself into balance, to working with my own energy. And one of the things I talk about is in 2018, well, really it was 2017 to 2018, I worked a lot. And I worked up and down the state of California. I worked in New York, and I was working on a local congressional campaign, and I was just on the move all the time. I took 70 flights or something like that year. I was living in a couple different places, on the road all the time, and that really threw my root chakra out of whack. And one of the things I've noticed for me is 2 weeks away from home is about where I start to feel ungrounded. That's just my own thing. Some people might be a little bit more comfortable, on the road, have no problem making any place home. But around 2 weeks is where I start to feel I want to be home. I want to be in my bed. I want to put my feet on the ground in the place that feels safe, secure, stable, right? And that's classic root chakra stuff. So if I am going to be away for an extended period of time, I like to turn to nature, my meditation and grounding, to stay grounded, to not start to go a little bit squirrely, and that doesn't always work. That's just what I've noticed for myself. So I really encourage you with this information, kind of armed with this information, I encourage you to explore this, look at the stuff in the parts of your life where you feel unstable, where you feel maybe like life isn't safe, and start to understand where those feelings come from, where those thoughts come from, what inspires them, what provokes them. Because when you start to understand those things, then you can start to make choices. Not unlike the section about generating positive energy. Again, we got to find our agency. We're not just, again, at the whims of the outside world. We are in relationship with the world. We're in relationship with people. We're in relationship to the planet. We're in relationship to everything. And so to some degree, there's like an exchange of outside influence and us and where we are. So we want to just claim our part of the bargain as much as we can. We got to do we got to hold up our end of the bargain with the rest of the world, and that's about us doing what we got to do to feel safe, stable, secure, and to believe that this world is abundant, that there is enough, that we're not all fighting for a small piece of the pie. That's a whole other discussion. Cheryl says, my gardening, flowers, and critters in nature. Yeah. Classic root chakra stuff. Can you recommend a meditation for balance using your root chakra? Victoria, I'm going to go into this deconditioning experiment, and I think what I want to do at the end is do a quick little grounding meditation. So stay tuned, and we'll do that together. I would love to offer that. Yes. Victoria says, how about stonework for it? I'm not sure about the stonework, what you mean by that. Like building, are you talking about actually doing stonework and building? I think that's up to you. If that's something that makes you feel stable and grounded, if that feels grounding for you, I might lump that in with, I would probably say, the root and then the sacral chakra, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But when we start to build stuff, yes, there's foundational, and we start to work with foundation energy, but also creativity and expression. So energy work with stones. Oh, I got what you're saying. Got it. Yeah, totally, yes, especially that. Energy work with stones, yeah, absolutely. That I would consider that. I was thinking more like masonry or stone masonry. Okay, let's jump forward. I'm gonna hop into this deconditioning thought experiment. And honestly, I'm gonna read the intro to this, and I'm gonna read it every day because I think it's something that we couldn't repeat enough. It's not that long, but this is something that I want us to consider as we work with each and every chakra. And we're going to go into an example, and I'm going to try and kind of connect it to the root chakra. So deconditioning thought experiment. So this is where we're going to get into that work that people were asking about. Well, how do I know? And how do I clear up? How do I heal that stuff that's influencing my intuition that maybe isn't my intuition? Maybe it's the ego and stuff. So let's talk about this. Deconditioning thought experiment. The story we tell ourselves about humanity and who we are as individuals is going to be at the center of all the reflective work we're going to engage in moving forward. Therefore, before we dive into the next set of practices, I want us to take a moment and engage in a simple analysis of some of our own sponsoring thoughts. A sponsoring thought is a fundamental idea or belief that precedes the creation of all other thoughts. It is the philosophical soil from which the seeds of our life springs and grows, which will determine how vibrant our life may potentially grow to be. Take, for example, the idea that human beings are born sinful and tainted by evil. This is a sponsoring thought about ourselves and all of humanity. If this idea or belief takes root in us through paternal, religious, and social conditioning, before we become conscious and self-reflective, what do you suppose will be the unconscious self-image we develop? Will we view our lives, our bodies, our impulses, and our desires as fundamentally good or fundamentally bad? How do you think the guilt and shame around our humanness that arises from this founding idea may impact the energy flowing in our chakra system? In today's case, the root chakra. So think about that. If we have a fundamental idea and belief that humans and humanity is born in sin and it's evil, if that's the foundation of our thoughts, our worldview, how might that shade our perspective and impact how we perceive our relationship to the world around us, as it specifically relates to the root chakra. So I'll just throw it out there. Because the root chakra is related to stability, safety, and security, if I fundamentally believe that humans are born in sin and that humanity is essentially evil, then my root chakra is already going to be out of whack. Because when I see a human, even my own humanness, but others, I might be more skeptical of them. I might think that they're evil. I'm going to think that they're trying to hurt me, right? And so immediately, as soon as you're afraid for your safety, because you fundamentally believe that humans are evil, well, our root chakra, right at the base, it's going to be out of whack, right? Hi, Oksana. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. So that's an example of how this would affect the root chakra. So let's continue. This is just one example I want to use to illustrate a larger point about what we'll be up to with this thought experiment. Our deepest spiritual and philosophical beliefs at their very essence carry an energetic vibration. This energetic vibration can move us more into alignment with our highest conceptions of the divine, love, compassion, and freedom. Or this frequency can create an energetic obstacle standing between us and our highest human potentials. We're going to go through a series of questions and acknowledge the sponsoring thoughts we are currently working with. We are then going to question where our conception came from and whether we have any lived experience that tells us the belief is objectively true. Then we're going to explore whether or not the possibility for an alternate sponsoring thought exists. So going back to our thoughts, our mental activity, our beliefs carry with them an energetic vibration. Perhaps this example that I presented here shows how the belief that humanity is evil immediately creates an obstacle in the root chakra. It creates a block in the root chakra because we're immediately on guard. So we couple this idea that humans are evil, with a sort of Darwinian capitalism, especially in our country, in America. Work, acquire, consume, build, big houses, lots of cars, fancy stuff. And if you ain't doing it, you're lazy. If you take those two things if you take those two basic ideas and that you're out there, not only is the world, are humans evil, but you're out there, there's only a limited amount of resources, money, housing, love. There's only so much of it out there and you got to get your own piece. Well, now you're in competition. You're fighting. Nothing is safe. Nothing is secure. Nothing is stable. Immediately we're like, we're all out of whack energetically. And this is our foundation. We're not even in, we haven't even got into the rest of the system. This is the base. And this is why we had to start here, right? This is the base. This is the root level. No pun intended, right? Or maybe that's why it's called the root. But perhaps this is illustrating why this is so important. And when it comes to opening up to our intuition, opening up to higher guidance, opening up to loving wisdom, that might be in conflict with those beliefs that, humanity, I think humanity is evil fundamentally, and I think that there's only a limited amount of resources to go around. If you start to get spiritual guidance that contradicts that, that's terrifying, right? Because it challenges your entire worldview. And in this case, the foundation, the root of your philosophical beliefs, the root of your energetic vibration on the most subtle level is being challenged by the guidance that says, take that risk. You can quit your job and do this other thing. Just trust, have faith. It's not for you. It doesn't serve you. Then we're like, whoa, what? No, not listening. That can be that's scary. I've had that experience many times. Or when things happen that contradict that fundamental belief. Someone shows an extreme amount of generosity, helps you out, helps get you a job, is trying to help get you a job, helps put you in a home, those kind of things. And then there's like this subtle resistance to it, because at our root, we think that humans are evil and bad, and that there's not enough to go around. Well, then why would somebody want to share with me? What? No. So it seems there could be this sense, like, so deeply, like, oh, but I have such a deep resistance. I have such a deep response in my being to this loving hand that has been extended to me. Like, oh, that must be like, I got to trust my gut. Actually, maybe your gut is connected to this out of balance, misguided belief that everybody's evil and that there's only so much to go around. Because if we look objectively out into the world, maybe that's not true. So then we're going to ask ourselves some questions. So I want to take us through these questions because I know it sounds exhausting, but this was my process. This has been my process philosophically. When I realize, okay, there's conditioning, there's stuff. I gotta get in there. I gotta get in there and figure out, where is this coming from? Where's my resistance to help? Where's my resistance to love? Where's my resistance to guidance? Where's my resistance to my own intuition coming from? I ask these questions. And so I'm inviting everybody to ask these questions with me as we go along and consider applying this in your own life to some of the matters we've discussed related to the heart, to the root chakra today. So let's go through this little thought experiment using the example, because I think this one is pervasive, and it's because, frankly, our religious teachings through many faiths sort of like will go here. Even the fundamental belief that posited in Buddhism that all of life is suffering. Like, I understand what that means without going like to the dark place, but like the fundamental belief that all of life is suffering, it's kind of hard. It's kind of heavy. It's kind of dark. That accepting that fundamentally could kind of maybe shade how you're going to perceive the world, right? So at the most fundamental level, do you believe human beings are essentially good, essentially evil, both, or a total blank slate? So just think about it with me here. At the most fundamental level, do you believe human beings are essentially good, essentially evil, both, or a total blank slate? So just answer that question before we continue on. So once we've answered that question for ourselves, we ask, why do I believe this? And I ask, what is the moment that I felt certain of this judgment? Tassa says, I believe good. Amazing. And that's going to shade your perspective, right? Just so you all know, there's no right or wrong answers here. Philosophy, no right or wrong answers. It's an important thing to understand. There's no right or wrong answers. But just, they are what they are. And then they are what they become when we enact those beliefs in the world. What was the moment you felt certain of this judgment? Well, I can trace back to sitting in church, hearing that, yeah, devil's out there, and we're prone to sinning because humanity fell the moment that the apple was plucked from the tree and taken a bite out of it. That was it. Done. We were doomed from the beginning. So for me, my personal journey, I remember my experiences in church hearing that people are sinful. And we're going to get into the thought experiment more. But I had parents that were really good. Like they weren't like sinning, right? And so immediately I was in conflict. My experience of people being fundamentally good or bad, what I heard in church did not jive with the models that my parents presented for me. So I already had evidence going, I don't know about that. That didn't feel right. Something about that's off. Which goes to the next question. What has been my personal lived experience? Not someone else's stories, not history books, not what I've seen on the news. In my day-to-day existence, what has been my experience interacting with and relating to other human beings? So now this like broad idea is going to get challenged with a little bit of nuance. Well, I believe that all people are fundamentally evil. Okay? Do we remember when that idea took root? And now do you have now lived, what's your lived experience though? So this is the follow-up questions. Have I ever seen a good person do bad things? Have I ever seen a good person do good things? I'm not going to think for you, but the answer to that question is probably yeah to both. So as I go through this, if I was starting with that fundamental belief that everybody's a sinner, Cheryl says there was a plaque outside my church as a youth that said, all who enter here are sinners. That's awful. Personally, I believe that's like so destructive, but that's my own personal point of view. And we're seeing what, because we start to dissect it, and it's like, I start with that belief that everybody here is a sinner. But then I check in with my experience, and for you, maybe it wasn't your parents, maybe it was a priest or a pastor or a spiritual guide. Maybe it was your grandmother, your aunt, your brother, your sister. And you're like, I don't know, I know it says everybody's a sinner, but I don't know, I've seen this person, they seem really nice. They do a lot of nice, good things. They feel pure in their intentions, right? So already where our experience starts to shift and shade, this belief starts to kind of crumble though. Yeah, I've seen a good person do bad things. I've seen a good person sin, and I've also seen a sinner do nice things, right? So all of a sudden we're blowing that up. So here's the next important question. Is there a possibility that I have more to learn and experience before making a broad judgment about all of humanity as a whole? And that puts us in a gray area. And I think Cheryl might I think Cheryl might agree with me here, because we've had conversations and exchange offline about the Tao and Taoism and the Tao Te Ching, which is one of my favorite spiritual documents. So now we've kind of entered the gray area. Well, maybe it's not so definite. So if you think about the journey we've already been on in just a few short questions, this really begins to loosen things up. It begins to shift. Energy moves. It's not stuck. It's not rigid, right? That obstacle that the rigid belief created, the shape, the form, the construct begins to dissolve. Is there a possibility I have more to learn and experience before making a broad judgment about all of humanity? And then, am I open to shedding my sponsoring thought for the sake of understanding the whole of humanity more deeply? And I'm even going to throw in there without judgment, because that's nice work to do. Jesus said, why are you pointing at the speck in your neighbor's eye and you fail to recognize the plank in your own? One finger pointing at you, 3 pointing right back. So judgment's is a nice thing, a nice healthy thing to keep in check. Is there a possibility I have more to learn and experience before making a broad judgment? And am I open to shedding my sponsoring thought for the sake of understanding the whole of humanity more deeply without judgment? Or philosophically opening up to a more nuanced experience of the world? There's no black and white, Tassa says. Cheryl says she loves the Tao. I knew it. I know she would love the Tao. I said Tao. I didn't mean to. I know it's Tao, pronounced with a D. And then finally, if I'm open to forming a new sponsoring thought about humanity, or I'm going to say if you're open to forming a new sponsoring thought about humanity, take a moment to consider what your own ideal vision of humanity is. What new sponsoring thought would support this? Again, we're not talking, there's no right answers here. But what I'm hoping is being illuminated or what will be illuminated in engaging in this process is we're going to open up and say, if we're open to changing our sponsoring thought, well then what is it? And it might be as simple as Tassa says, there is no black and white. That's not a bad place to be, you know. If you're philosophically, your ideas, those beliefs and those structures that provide the foundation and the filter to how you experience the world. So if that idea of everybody being evil and that there's limited resources available to us, if we really embrace and subscribe to that idea and that belief and that perspective, because it's a perspective, right? If we subscribe to that fully and we integrate it into our body, into our being, into our energy system, into our chakras, fundamentally, that chakra is going to start to be out of balance. Because there's a belief, a perception, before experience enters, that life is unsafe. That the world is not kind, you know? Not to say that the world's not kind or unkind in many situations. It's not to deny that. It's just that maybe that's not all. That's not all of it. And it's these sort of these beliefs and perspectives that they cloud our perspective. It happens to all of us. I do it. So I'm not an exception. But Gandhi talks about in his journey of living fully, living out soul force, right? Being love in action, to being kind of truth in motion expressed. If we're going to be in that space, he talks about the purification of the heart. Jesus talks about purifying our heart. And if we were going to expand that out, I would say that's about trying to pull back, you know, all the veils that have clouded our vision. There's a great analogy, and I forget where that came from. It might have been in some Hindu thought that I had explored at some point. But they talk about the veils, and it's like imagining, you know, you draped a different colored veil. Let's say you draped 7 different colored veils over your eyes, and you'd like see a vague outline of the world. And every time you pulled one back, not only would the color shift, but you'd start to see it a little bit more clearly. And we pull it back, and we pull it back. Those veils are ideas, our beliefs. They're those things that shade our color, our perspective, our filter, and the way we perceive the world. And that has implications on our energy centers. It has implications as how we react and respond to the world around us. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it evil? Is it helpful? All those things. Those are questions we all have to answer for ourselves. And so I always come back to, well, what are my, like the question, you know, if you were going to change your sponsoring thought. I know this is a big ask. I'm asking us to form our own philosophy. You know, get in there, do what Descartes and Leibniz and Schopenhauer and you know, Hume, the classics. But Jesus, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, everybody, do what all those people did, and like, what is your ideas about the world? What are they? If you're open to forming a new sponsoring thought about humanity, what would it be? What would it be? And what sponsoring thought would support that vision? That's stuff that you get to answer for yourself, you know? That's fun. I love it. But to bring it back to the root chakra, to bring it back to us reclaiming our power, our spiritual power, to us aligning ourselves. You know, we talk about this in this work or in this space about alignment. Being aligned in thought, word, and deed. Aligning our chakras. It's like we have to define what's our North Star. And there's nothing more powerful in the world than alignment. Someone who's aligned in thought, word, and deed is aligned in all of the creative all in the aspects of how we express creativity, at all the levels of creation. It's really powerful. And yes, that's how folks who maybe have even limited ideas, maybe there are people that believe that, there are people that believe that all people are evil and that this world, there's limited resources. And so that's their guiding North Star. And if they believe that from their root chakra, that affects everything else on the way up. The sacral chakra, the solar plexus, and maybe at the end we'll talk about how it's all connected, like at the end of the week. But that informs everything. And so those can be very powerful forces in the world because they're aligned. They're not wavering from that belief. They're not wavering from that conviction. But that might not be the most constructive perspective. It might not be helpful. It might not be kind. It might not be compassionate. It might not be cooperative. It might not be charitable. So if those of us in this group, this is a spiritually centered group. So if we say that our ideals are, as Valerie has said, unity, love, right? If unity and love is the North Star, if that's our North Star, if that's our the destination we're going towards, if that's our new sponsoring thought, that we are all united. For example, if this is my personal perspective, I believe that it's all God, all of it. So if I believe that it's all God, I have to, I gotta align myself with that. If I'm convinced that that's what's going on, then I need to honor that in my thoughts. I need to honor that in my words, and I need to honor that in my deeds. And that makes us a very powerful force. It goes back to what Gandhi called the soul force and the clinging to truth. It's one of the things that I really latched onto, and it helped inspire this book. That's why I called it Awakening Soul Force. Soul force is a borrowed term. If we believe that God is love and that God is a unified field of consciousness, or the creative, loving, supportive being that allows this to take place, well, then how do we align ourselves energetically with love and with peace and unity? How do we do that? Do we honor that in our thoughts? Is it reflected in the way we treat and respond to events around us? That affects our root chakra, right? If I believe it's all God, and I have faith in that, then maybe I'm not going to perceive my job loss as much of a threat. If I know something's being subtracted out of my life to bring something new in. And this is basic, obviously we could really do the deep dive into what are the implications of believing those things, right? That's what those questions are for. But this is just to show kind of the difference in perspective, If I believe or have faith, or what my sponsoring thought is, all things are happening for the perfection of my soul, or for the perfection of love, then that might change how I respond to challenges in my life. And events. And that creates a very different reality than if I just believe everybody's evil, Again, this is not a good or a bad thing. It's just a perspective. That's the end of what it is. Cheryl says, so if your root chakra is unbalanced, individuals may become subject to ideological targets. That's a good question. Fundamentally, if we feel alienated or estranged from society, we don't have the community, we don't have the connection to a community that is part of what provides our foundation energetically. The science is there. Science tells us we're social beings, right? So energetically, though, we're working in this space, and if we don't have a sense of belonging, I would answer your question, Cheryl, is yes, because we might gravitate towards ideology or dogma or rigid beliefs to provide a sense of community, right? And how that affects, or what those particular beliefs are, is going to influence everything else, all the way up the chain. So if this Soul Force group is built around, its foundation is a bunch of individuals who believe in building a better world together. That's kind of at the core of what we do here. Like we're all here trying to understand ourselves, and how do we become a channel for God's loving awareness? How do we become a channel and a vessel for love and peace and wisdom, creativity, creative intelligence. And we find camaraderie in that. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. In the sense that that's a pretty positive force in the world. Now, we know that the universe is made of polarities. So there are going to be people that find their belonging around darker ideas. And it might be that a certain class of people is subhuman, or a certain class of an economic status is subhuman. And they might find belonging there, and that has its own different ramifications. But going back to the Tao, Cheryl, it's about balance. It's about balance and energy. Yeah, and it just makes me think, like, I'm just carrying that out a little bit, Cheryl. When I think about safety, security, stability, it's like if we fundamentally believe that the world is an unsafe place, and we find a home and a community in believing that villainizing or attacking people violently is the answer, and then those violent experiences then undermine the stability that you find in the community. You know what I mean? Hopefully we're following. I think that makes sense. But it's just that there's so many dimensions to each chakra. I mean, they kind of cover these broad areas of life. And that's where we start to need to, if we're really vigilant about it, we're looking for those inconsistencies, right? We're looking for those things that we realize are kind of self-negating. I don't remember if I read this in a book. This is something that stuck with me. I wrote this down a long time ago when I was a teenager. It might have came through in a channeling. A sin is self-induced negativity. And I don't know if I read that somewhere, so I'm not sure if that's something I picked up somewhere else, like in a book, but self-induced negativity. And that was something that stuck with me about when we do something that we think is righteous or right, or we do something and we don't see the immediate impact of how it's harmful to ourselves. That's part of what deconstructing our conditioning and doing that thought experiment, I think, that's one of the important aspects of that, is can we become aware of our own contradictions? Can we become aware of the contradiction in our thought, word, and deed, and even the belief itself? Those are fun things that should keep us busy philosophically. Anyhow, Cheryl says, I'm seeing a lack of tolerance. I just keep trying to pull both sides to the middle. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the balance, right, Cheryl? Laws of physics, energy that's in motion will stay in motion until acted upon by some outside force. From my perspective, so much of what we're wrestling with on an energetic level, I can't help but look at energetically, like what goes on in relationship, in families and communities and as a country and all that kind of stuff in the world. It's hard for me not to look at it from an energy perspective, because I just live there, that's my experience. And so much of where we're working towards is just embodying, embracing energy that brings us more into balance as individuals and as a community and all that stuff. I don't think there's any question that we could use more love, more acceptance, more tolerance, more mercy, more grace, more forgiveness, more compassion. And so for our purposes here of this group, if that's what we're saying we're going to be, we're going to hold space for that. The more aligned we are in thought, word, and deed, the more powerful we become as a force. And this book is called Awakening Soul Force. It's awakening. It's the beginning process. The second book, Living with Soul Force, that is going through, I'm going through an editing phase now, cleaning it up. That's like the next step in the alignment. This is about figuring ourselves out on a fundamental level, at a foundational level, beginning with the root chakra and working all the way up through it. This helps set the stage for us to be a clear channel to bring through those higher ideals of love, peace, wisdom, grace, mercy, compassion, cooperation, reconciliation, those healing dimensions, those things that need to bring us into balance, that we need to bring us into balance as individuals and as a collective. The second book is really about going deeper into being open to those higher ideals, to those aspects of humanity and consciousness, of the universe, of God consciousness, being more of an open channel for those vibrations, for that energy. That's my intention, with the work that I'm doing here, is to experiment with that path. How do I get there? And then share what I discover along the way, so that we become a soul force. We become soul force. We become love in motion. We become spiritual truth in action. We become our lived, breathed experiences of God's loving awareness in the flesh. How do we do that? We're all figuring it out together. Getting deep, yeah, going there. All right, everybody. That's about an hour. It's about an hour. I think that's good. I'm so glad you got in here on the beginning too. Kate says, same energy, intertwining, undoing, releasing, bringing awareness into realigning, cycling through cleansing for intuitive guidance. Yeah. Thanks, Kate. Yeah, so this is day one. This is the root chakra. A lot of material here. If you haven't had a chance to pick up the book, go ahead and pop on to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com, Awakening Soul Force. You can search me by my name too with the title. And it's really the foundation. From my experience, energetically, the chakras were my gateway into understanding myself and understanding my intuition and understanding the ways in which the intuition or the inspiration is blocked or obstructed, the stuff that needs to be healed. It's where all the meat is. To me, it's where all the work is. So, today we talked about the root chakra specifically, our foundation. Those mantras: I'm safe, I am secure, I am strong, there is enough. It's a different mindset, and that has an impact energetically on a subtle level. If those are my sponsoring thoughts, I'm safe, I'm strong, there is enough, that alone has its own energetic and philosophical impact. So that's what we talked about today. Energetically, if there is any need for balance, soul forces are a fantastic opportunity to walk that stage to help promote and provide the balance for those involved. Yeah. If that's what we're here for, if that's what we're here to be, kind of a loving vessel, then we show up and we be that, even when it's not that. And we try as best we can, and it's a process. We're human. Might not always work. Might not always be pretty. We're going to make mistakes. Probably going to ruffle feathers and our own. It's going to be disruptive, but it's just an experiment. It's a big old experiment. Is there a schedule for the rest of the energy centers? I'm just going to do them the next several days. I'm just going to do them, post them. They'll be online. They'll be on YouTube. So I'm just going to keep popping on. I didn't think about a schedule. I feel compelled to do this. And it really came after last week's conversation about, intuition and what gets in the way. And And so I'm taking Spanish class and doing a bunch of other stuff. But I just feel like now it's time to bring this forward, to talk about it, to discuss it, and then we'll probably revisit it again. Deanna says, I'm beginning to think I have been operating from the opposite of my root chakra, which makes sense, the constant need to find balance. Interesting to have that revelation, right? It's a big thing. It's really the work is getting into, like, literally at the granular level, like what's going on with us psychologically, what's spiritually, philosophically, like what's going on there? And is it serving us? Is it serving our growth? Is it serving the ideal of compassion, wisdom, all that stuff? Yeah. Well, check back every day. I will tag it. Check back every day, and then also check the YouTube. So check me out on YouTube, and the videos will definitely be up there. And spoiler alert, I guess I'm going to share it with y'all just because this will solve a lot of our problems. I've been working on an app that has a social component to it. So just like, where we post stuff, there's a wall. It has a wall. You make a little profile. People can share links and stuff like that. So I've been working on a kind of a do-it-yourself app that will pull Soulforce content together. So stay tuned for that. I'm not sure when the release is. I've just applied for the initial phase of the app and stuff. And it's going to have meditations. It's going to have the book. It's going to have more videos that I plan on doing. It's going to have probably the next phase, the Living with Soulforce book and material, and I should say the accompanying material on there as well eventually. So I'm working on making it as easy as possible for us to stay connected around this stuff, and to just bring all the content that I'm creating together in one place that makes it easy to access, so it doesn't make it tough. Thanks, Cheryl. Muchas gracias, Cheryl. Estoy aprendiendo mucho. In fact, yo tengo mucha tarea today, hoy. I have so much homework to catch up on still. So I will be popping on the next several days, 7 days straight. We're going to talk about the chakras. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the sacral chakra, and we're going to take that next level up. So we talked about the root today, our foundation. Well, we're going to move into a different center now, different parts of the body, different parts of our expression and creativity and stuff like that. And we're going to do the deep dive there, and we can do some reflecting. We'll go through the thought experiment again, allow you to follow along, and just see if we can kind of deconstruct ourselves in the process. The deconstruction is the step to reinventing ourselves, and it's exciting because it's creative. That makes us creators. So, all right, everybody. Yo también 30 minutos. Mandarin. Wow. Korean too. That's amazing. Muy bien, Cheryl. I'm far away from picking up 2 more languages, but I'll get this one. All right, everybody. This has been a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you, to be in this space, to hold this space, and to hold these conversations. So thank you so much for being here. I really, really look forward to jumping on tomorrow and talking again. I will jump on tomorrow as well at 4 p.m. So we'll do 4 p.m. tomorrow. I'll keep y'all updated in the posts, but we'll be back here 4 p.m. tomorrow to talk about the sacral chakra. It's the color orange, the color of my shirt. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.